Rodney, I hope you're having a great Wednesday afternoon. Welcome into the game in T-Town.
I'm doing well, Ryan. I hope you are too.
Yeah, and I want to pick your brain about a lot of different things, but going back to first day of practice, obviously the negative news about Tua Tagovailoa getting hurt, just your overall thoughts about Tua's injury.
Well, I mean, wow. How do you put that into perspective? I mean, after, the finish that he had, and then here you are on the first day of spring practice, a lot of excitement, non-contact work, shorts, helmets, that's about it. And, an offensive lineman gets pushed back into his throwing lane, I guess you could say, and he hits his hand on the helmet, and you have the broken bone there. And, again, there's been a lot of different speculation about, when he might return and what have you, Ryan. It wouldn't surprise me to see him back on the field doing some things. I'm not sure he'll be fully recovered, until after spring practice shortly maybe. But it would not surprise me to see him trying to do some things relatively soon.
Yeah, I think that's one conversation that obviously quarterbacks, though, is even Nick Saban, his second comment was, we're talking about a quarterback with his hand injury and gripping the football. It is his throwing hand, which obviously, how do you think this impacts this quarterback competition that we're having here this spring?
Well, I mean, the one thing it does, obviously, is it's going to negate the reps that, Tua was going to get, some of them at least for a while. So, again, I thought it was all about development, really, for all these guys, for the most part right now, where they are. I thought that was the key with new offense coordinator Mike Locksley, new quarterbacks coach Dan Enos. But, look, let me say this. People talk about, Tua and this injury and how to set him back. He certainly needed the reps. That's not what I'm saying. But, think about this. We are talking about a guy who only played one half of football in the last 5 games leading up to the national championship. And he didn't need a lot of experience to go in there after halftime, trailing 13-0. And you're asking a kid with that limited experience, which is unprecedented, absolutely unprecedented, to go onto the field and lead your team to a comeback win in the national championship game against the top 3 defense. So what I'm saying is this kid here, he's an overcomer. I don't think there's any question about that. Yes, it does not help him to miss these reps, but we've seen him do things that are absolutely phenomenal, in my opinion. So will it set him back maybe a little bit, but I don't think it'll hold him back.
You always think about it, and you never know how players are going to handle this, but you think about the amount of frustration. I mean, this young man who waited, be patient, set back, was a great team player, gets his chance, wins the national title, comes in, throws 3 touchdowns, and then the first day, because as fans, as media, you get kind of frustrated because of the excitement that you wanted to see, but then you often forget about the frustration the players going through because he was geared up and the anxiety to get into this spring competition, and then now it's all kind of shut down here for the meantime. It has to be frustrating for him going through this as well.
Well, Ryan, here's what I think about him. And again, this is just an observation, and that is that I really don't know that Tua, just kind of his personality, looks at it as frustration.
Sure.
I think it creates more determination for him.
Oh, great
I think
point.
he's so positive. I think that's the way he kind of, his perspective is. And again, I'm not making him into something that maybe he's not, but I think that's kind of the positive mindset that he approaches things with. That even though it's a setback, and certainly he waited his turn, and the frustration could be there. I think he uses it more as determination.
Well, you even saw him last night following the injury and even Nick Saban's announcement. He waited, his coach made the announcement, and then he took to Twitter to write up a Proverbs and to say, hey, obviously it didn't give a lot of elaboration, but just talked about where his inspiration comes from to maybe get through this little bit of a valley there. But going to the quarterback competition here, let me focus on Dan Enos because there's a lot of excitement around this guy being that individual quarterback coach and what he's going to bring to Alabama. And you get to see that firsthand in the first 10, 15 minutes of viewing period yesterday.
You know what? Yeah, Ryan, he's a little more vocal, I think, than what I remember from some of the past offensive coordinators. I mean, just standing out there on the field, you might hear Kiffin a little bit. And again, that's just during the media viewing period. Dable seemed to be more quiet, but Enos is, always talking to the quarterbacks, and you could hear some of the things, some of the encouragement that he was, had to say. And it was interesting listening to him say, he wanted the quarterbacks, he told them he wanted them to hit a spot. He wanted them to find the spot, hit the spot, be rhythm passers, and he kept emphasizing these things to the quarterbacks over and over and over again as they were going through some of the drills. So he's got a great reputation for developing quarterbacks, in my opinion. I thought he did a great job at Arkansas with those Allen brothers, Brandon Allen, and then his younger brother, Austin Allen. Thought he did a fantastic job with those guys. Had a great offense, I thought, there. And again, I understand Mike Locksley is the offensive coordinator, but I do think it always helps to have a guy that not only can develop the quarterbacks like Enos can, but he certainly can lend a lot in terms of, what you want to do in terms of building this offense and with the talent that they have. So I really like that combination of Locksley and Dan Enos.
No, I do too. And then you combine that with a guy like Josh Gaddis, because I've heard nothing but positive things. And I know you cover recruiting the way that you do, but it seems like there's a positive reaction to Josh Gaddis and what he's going to bring. So you really kind of get excited about some of these offensive guys. And I know we'll work to defense, but Josh Gaddis is another great addition to this coaching staff.
Yeah, and he was talking to the receivers quite a bit, too. He was another one that I thought was pretty vocal out there and, talking to the receivers about coming back to the ball, doing these little things that he wants them to do. And so he was coaching really hard. I know he is a great recruiter. I think the year before last, he was the Big Ten Recruiter of the Year at Penn State. So he does a fantastic job in that regard. And Joe Panunzio, I really like Joe Panunzio as well. Of course, he's a veteran coach, and now moving to the running backs is really, really different because, Ryan, when we walk in, when they practice indoors, one of the first groups we come upon is Coach Burton Burns and the running backs. And, not seeing or listening or hearing Coach Burns out there, staying on top of those running backs was a little bit different. But Joe Panunzio did a fantastic job, and he did a great job with the tight ends. And but it was a little bit different out there not seeing Burton Burns. On the defensive side, if you were going to ask about that, I obviously there's a lot of new coaches there. We didn't get to see a couple of them, Pete Golding and the Coach Kuligowski, the defensive line coach. I think they had their groups outside, so the media really did not get an opportunity to see them. But I understand, from everyone I talked to, very, very high regard for both of those coaches so far since they've been here, doing a fantastic job. And, Tosh LaPoy now the defensive coordinator and Carl Scott in the secondary.
Let me go to Keith Holcomb here for a couple of minutes. Obviously, Alabama needs some depth at that inside backer. He's going to focus on baseball, having a great season. We talked swinging a bat and what he's going to provide. A lot of people say that, he has a chance to be a very solid baseball player. What do you expect, Keith Holcomb? And obviously, I think this is really a prediction, but looking at Keith Holcomb, Alabama in the greedy side, you need him on the football field, but you also got to understand the potential that he has in baseball as well.
Yeah, and again, my own opinion is, and I think, Keith has done a really nice job. And, he's a very talented guy as a baseball prospect, I think. A guy that's a left-handed hitter that can get down that line that fast, that quickly. He's great size. I mean, so I really can't blame him for, his interest in terms of just focusing on baseball for right now and maybe even sticking to that. We'll see what happens. He's had some injuries, in football. And like you said, though, Ryan, I mean, certainly when you're talking about the depth at inside linebacker as we look forward, Alabama really needs some depth next year inside. And, Keith Holcomb's been around, and he certainly could provide that. So it will be very interesting, I think, when he and Coach Saban ultimately sit down and start to determine his future.
Rodney, let me go to the offensive line here for a couple of minutes. Matt Womack, and just speaking of Matt Womack, his dad just tweeted out a couple of seconds ago. He said Matt's surgery went great, should be back in 6 weeks. Now, that's coming straight from his dad on his Twitter account there, that Matt Womack had successful surgery, should be back in about 6 weeks. Who could take advantage of Matt Womack being out the most at that right tackle spot?
Well, they've got some very talented guys, obviously, on that offensive line. A lot of experimentation going on, Ryan. But Jedrick Wills, obviously, the sophomore who played some last year as a true freshman. I think he's extraordinarily talented, and I think he'll push for some time there. You know, there was talk that he may push for that starting job already, regardless. So, really, I think Jedrick Wills, although I think Wills also could get a look inside at guard, could even get a look at center maybe. We'll see what happens. He's that versatile, that talented. But I tell you another guy that has all the tools. I mean, if he can kind of put everything together and the light bulb goes off, and you know this, Ryan, when you draw him up, Scott Lashley looks about as good as anybody out there. And he's actually a redshirt sophomore out of West Point, Mississippi. I think this is going to be an opportunity for him at that right tackle spot too, because, you know, you could even see them look at maybe Lashley at right tackle, slide Wills inside at right guard, you know, because Lester Cotton may be limited some this spring, did go through drills yesterday. So could be interesting. Again, a lot of combinations are going to be worked up front.
It's going to be a lot. Devontae Smith working at defensive back. I know Nick Saban said don't read too much into it, but when you hear the star wide receiver, the national championship winning wide receiver working at defensive back, it does grab your attention.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the deal. Yeah, he was and was wearing a white jersey, which signifies offense, obviously, and all the other guys on defense are wearing crimson. So he was out there. It did get your attention, you know, and you had to think, wait a minute, obviously he's still wearing an offensive jersey. This certainly isn't going to happen. And then Coach Saban clarified afterwards that, you know, during the individual drills, which is the part where the media gets in and gets to observe for 5 or 10 minutes, he did go through with the defensive backs, but, you know, shortly thereafter, he was back on offense working with the wide receivers. And it's a shortage, Ryan, out there. You know, that's why they signed 5 defensive backs, and actually all 5 of them can play cornerback, you know, because they have a shortage. And 4 of those guys that they signed aren't here. Savion Smith is the only one that's in school right now participating in spring drills. So it's really important to get someone over there to help them through the individual drills, and Devontae Smith is kind of filling that role right now.
Rodney, did anybody grab your attention that we have not talked about? Maybe that when you walk out on that practice field just for a few minutes, you know, there's always those guys that jump out to you that they spent that fourth quarter program under Scott Cochran, and even more so in the fall because it's been a longer length of time. But just looking, anybody out there that we're overlooking that I haven't asked you about that maybe jumped out to you in your observation period?
Well, you know, really, I guess the one guy that did was Damian Harris. And the reason was, you know, obviously Damian he decided not to go to the NFL when he could have done that, come back for his senior year. Not many guys make that decision. But I thought Damian looked as probably better than I'd ever seen him physically. He looked really, really good. Looked like he had taken on, even though he's always been a leader, you got the sense watching him that he was even taking on more of that role. I thought Najee Harris looked a little sleeker as well. You know, the year in this weight program certainly helps a guy like that. And not that he was in bad shape at all. Don't get me wrong, but he just looked a little more fine tuned. And you know, the crazy thing, Ryan, Brian Robinson from Tuscaloosa Hillcrest is basically a clone of Najee Harris. I mean, it is amazing how similar, you know, those two are. And I'll say one other thing. Tua Tagovailoa, anybody that thinks he was slacking since that January 8th heroic game that he had, he's lost roughly about 10 pounds, I think. He looks to be in tremendous shape, as we looked at him yesterday. And, you know, the people you talk to say he's quicker, he's faster, and he has really, really worked hard. So I thought he looked good physically as well.
Yeah, you could see the eye test was certainly passing that, and you go back and you study the videos and you look at Tua Tagovailoa throwing the football. It was like it was the last day of regular season, the way that he was throwing the football, just by the visuals there. Rodney Orr, TiderInsider.com. Tell us more about the website. Certainly this is a very, very busy time for spring practice, nuggets, the exchange of information. I know you've already had some inside posts there on the forums. Talk about what people are able to get on TiderInsider.com.
Yeah, Ryan, we've got video on the front page. If your listeners, they don't have to be a member. They can go watch that. And we've got a podcast on there from right before spring talking about the defense and various things. And then yesterday, a lot of stuff, photos from practice, our observations, my observations in a 10-minute viewing period. And then also today added some notes from things that we've picked up and a recruiting story as well. So a lot going on there at TiderInsider.com. And as you said, Ryan, on the forums, it's pretty much nonstop, and it's only $48 a year. That's just $4 a month. You can charge that to your credit card, get instant access, or if you prefer, there's an address there to send a check.